What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. In our last video we spoke about the Easter ceasefire and how Putin completely miscalculated everything, ending up humiliating himself even more. The assumption was that if Ukraine will not have enough time to react and break the fragile peace as a result, Putin will be able to openly blame Ukrainians for everything that has happened. But he never took into consideration that Zelensky might actually accept his terms and propose something even longer ceasefire, for up to even 30 days or even more.
And is calling the Kremlin's bluff, saying 30 hours, let's make it 30 days. But the truce has barely held for an hour, with both sides blaming the other.
The response of Putin? Well, he didn't even bother giving an answer. Instead, Putin's mouthpiece, Dmitry Peskov, made it crystal clear. No extension on his watch is possible. And yet, for a split second, something remarkable unfolded. For the first time in over 1100 days of unrelenting this conflict, bullets paused midair and bombs held their breath. It was not flawless, not by any means, but against all odds, soldiers on both sides ventured from trenches, waving white flags, and brought stretchers across ravaged fields to collect their comrades without fear of being attacked. The main question we all got is the following. If war can silence itself for an Easter weekend, isn't it worth it trying to keep up the silence longer? The most extraordinary phenomenon that happened is that even some ZPropagandists were borderline next to asking the very same question. But then they remembered who pays their bills, right? Kremlin. But it did show at least temporarily shift in their mentality, which is very interesting to investigate. And that, guys, is exactly what we are going to do in today's video. When you've lived long enough through years of non-stop shelling, the idea of a real ceasefire sounds like a cruel joke, but there it was. Both Russian and Ukrainian soldiers strolling into open fields, hands raised, white flags in the air. The opponents at first peeked over their trenches, blinking in disbelief, because for decades the term ceasefire on these kind of battles meant little more than a desire to create some good-looking propaganda headlines, nothing else. Yet, in the raw morning light, footage posted by Russian Z-blogger Anatoly Radov swept across pro-war channels, capturing men on both sides just gently carrying stretchers towards each other's lines.
Russian Z-blogger Anatoly Radov published the revelations of a mobilized soldier. His mood, according to him, coincides with the opinion of all mobilized soldiers. In the message, the soldiers write, "This money. I'm ready to return everything, every penny. If only it would end."
Eliminated and wounded fighters moved through the gray zone in full view of the opposite force. It was a scene so unexpected that it felt almost surreal, like two gladiators refusing to strike one another and instead sharing bread and water. And I mean, yeah, this fragile peace did nevertheless come with some caveats. A handful of sacrilegious shell fragments still rained down on quiet sectors, and accusations were traded back and forth faster than the actual rounds. Side A blamed Side B for stealth strikes, only for the roles to reverse a switch like 20 minutes later. But amid all the blame and finger-pointing, something tangible happened. No new death tolls, at least not that many, according to the official reports. Across hundreds of kilometers where rockets and mortars had deafened soldiers before, there was silence. Not scripted, not signed treaty, and certainly not bulletproof, but powerful enough to prove a point. When commanders stumble upon orders to stand down, they can be obeyed. And if these orders involve no longer risking their lives, people will actually be more than happy to do it. So it begs the question, why cannot this peace then last longer? In Bakhmut, for example, a city that had known destruction like no other city in Ukraine, dawn broke calm for the first time since 2022. Residents tasted a peace so foreign they had almost forgotten how it feels. Quiet streets, bird songs instead of artillery, smoke rising from chimneys rather than consequences of war. Soldiers from both armies wandered out, scanning trenches, and counted casualties in relative peace, rather than at the sounds of cover fire. field medics expressed relief by reviving memories of humanity in a place that had long surrendered it. For 30 hours, war pressed pause, and when the guns finally roared back to life, the echo of that silence ignited more powerfully than any shell burst. If men can choose to lay down arms now, what prevents a broader ceasefire tomorrow? And guys, one quick announcement, not a promotion, not an advertisement, don't worry, just a word from myself. For more than 3 years, my posting schedule has been Tuesday to Saturday, with weird absence of videos on Monday. Well, not anymore. We are launching Thanks God It's Monday podcast, where once a week, and you guessed it, on Mondays, I will be talking with very interesting guests, listening to their stories and sharing them with you. The first episode is actually already live. I'm talking with sanctioned Ivan, and he shares his chilling story of trying to escape Russia and then coming back, just to be detained and interrogated by the FSB on his way back home.
Want to tell you one thing, guys. I have no idea what we're going to be talking about, and this is going to get very interesting. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now on this channel right here to see more podcasts coming out.
I don't want to spoil more, I don't want to spoil too much, so guys, please go ahead and listen to the first episode of our new podcast after you finish this video. And then let me know down below in the comments what do you think about it and which guest should we have next. Very excited to share this new chapter with you guys. Thanks so much. And now let's continue talking about how the ZPropaganda reacted to the news of ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. While the streets of Ukraine remained silent, the Russian state-run networks kept spinning mostly expected narratives. Россия 1 and Channel 1, two biggest propagandistic TV channels, treated this Easter truce like a sunrise party they refused to attend. The newscast either ignored Zelensky's 30-day peace proposal or framed it as a proof of Ukrainian ingratitude. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Most Russians get their news from also unofficial sources as well, like Telegram, so they did hear Zelensky's proposal there 100%. But the ZPropaganda still made it look like Ukrainians refused and wanted just to keep fighting. On Россия 1, for example, the narrative operated on a simple algorithm. Russia initiates goodwill, Ukraine refuses it, and only Moscow emerges blameless. Similarly, Channel 1 came in with vague dismissals, painting Zelensky's extension offer as baseless whining. Because when you spin a narrative hard enough, soon enough the fabric feels real. Whatever it means in the eyes of propagandists. Viewers were told that Russian bullets observed the ceasefire completely, while the good-for-nothing Ukrainians tarnished it with over 1,000 violations. Never mind even the white flag footage almost every single Russian who follows the war saw. They still buried the facts beneath a mountain of scripted blames. Even some social media outlets tackled this line, calling them the sacrilegious acts. Yet, in the back alleys of Telegram, where citizen journalists thrive, the footage of recovery squads stamped up the official fairy tale. Raw clips showed Russian soldiers bearing a tattered Red Cross banner, retrieving their own friends, as Ukrainian commanders did the same with their own soldiers. I mean, strange how miracles thrive in obscurity, where no censoring eye can snuff them out. When witnesses tweet videos of peace in motion, official spin collapses like a house of cards. But try telling that to the morning anchors, who had rather champion state-approved propaganda rather than humanity, and well, suddenly it all seems impossible. If a pixelated YouTube video can shred government narrative to pieces, what chance does a scripted broadcast stand? Propaganda thrives when facts stay buried, but the Easter ceasefire showed them right into the open. And it's clear that after years of marinating in chaos, the audience craves something real, even if it is only just one single day. The network's reluctance to own the ceasefire reveals an unspoken nightmare for the regime. Admit that war can pause once, and then you'll have to acknowledge it can actually end. That scares them more than any possible massive Ukrainian counteroffensive. That was the reaction of mostly official Russian media within Russia itself. But what about relatively independent bloggers and ZPropagandists? Well, there we have completely different story. Let's talk about this right now. Meanwhile, the pro-war blogging community exploded into contradictory debate. Some clowns clutched their keyboards like bayonets, denouncing any talk of a ceasefire as treachery. Yuri Kotenek, true to his form, fired off a toxic post on April 20th, claiming the enemy never stopped shooting and branding Ukrainians as unhinged barbarians. He was practically yelling with the foam around his mouth, a living proof that for some rage is more contagious than common sense. Yet across the digital trench, other voices preached caution. Yuri Podolyaka, for example, with his 3 million strong following, initially played the devil's advocate, calling the ceasefire uneventful, but, well, tipping his head to reality when Peskov's announcement came down. Suddenly the trolls hung up their keyboards and admitted, yes, the guns were indeed quiet. Then there was the anonymous channels, like the reverse side of the medal on Telegram, saying, sign up for mobilization if you hate peace so much. We dare you. The ridiculous people who wanted peace, mocking the entire idea of a break. Yet their counterparts, a fellow anonymous group, told a different story, one of relief, of wishing that the shelling stops so they could collect and bury brothers properly. Imagine no more ghosts in the grey zone, they said. If only we could stop shaking hands with death. It was the digital equivalent of two warlords arguing over who hates humanity the most, while ordinary recruits finally had an opportunity to breathe in a chest full of fresh air. But then there was Anastasia Kashevarova, the TV host turned blogger, one of the rising stars wannabe ZPropagandists Slavyev style. She invoked Easter rituals, suggesting only divine artillery could purify the streets in Kiev. Her words were full of toxic fury. Only a true believer can bomb with mercy, she said. And the comment section erupted in sacred mayhem. In this fractured panorama, everyone claimed the moral high ground, even as they threw each other under the bus. It was a social media scrum where ideology came dressed as fatigues and rage masqueraded as patriotism. If a ceasefire that popped up like a surprise snowstorm can tame missiles for 30 hours, then perhaps pause is not beyond the realm of possibility. Field reports whisper of coordinating officers, grainy footage hinting at secret nods between commanders exchanging compassionate glances. The myth that war is an unstoppable juggernaut crumbles when bullets stop flying. We saw it in every trench, every crater, men yearning for a break, for a chance to breathe without fear. The silence carved out windows for humanity, and if these windows can exist in hell itself, why not just simply widen the cracks? Ask yourself, what stops this fragile peace from stretching into days or months? The answer is not logistics or battlefield tactics. It's simply the willpower. If political leaders can summon the courage to agree in advance and ink it on paper, rather than doing some verbal agreements in late-night interviews that nobody's watching, the machinery of war can grind to a halt, apparently. War is easy to start, hard to end, and kinda difficult to restart, but not impossible. Next time promises resurface, they should come in guarantees instead of press releases. A written accord, signed and witnessed, could initiate something what was once dismissed as a media stunt. It is simply remarkable how a bit of paperwork can wield more power than a battalion of tanks. But let's not fool ourselves either. Real peace demands more than just post guns. It needs trust, accountability, and the willingness to see the opponent as human. A month of calm can demobilize hate as effectively as it drains ammunition. Families could reclaim fractured lives, fields could sprout new crops, and wounds, both physical and mental, might finally begin to heal. This Easter ceasefire was a fleeting miracle, but miracles demand believers. If enough people demand it, if enough commanders follow through, then the next silence may last longer than we even dare to dream. Well, there you have it, guys. Thanks so much, and please subscribe to my channel. Don't forget about our new podcast. Thanks God, it's Monday. The first episode is already live. Please go ahead and check it. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.